Profesor, izvolite.
Thank you very much indeed for that very nice welcome. It's a bit of a surprise. When I saw the program through the email last week, it was the first time I realized that we were getting this free publicity. And I'm sure our publisher will be even more pleased. This has become, in the last 4 years, become a major part of my activities. I started working on Islam in Europe in 1978. I had just come out of finishing my PhD in Beirut at the time. And there were at the time only 2 or 3 of us around Europe working on this subject. And I remember at the time writing to a few academic colleagues around Europe and asking, what do you think should be the focus of this research and documentation? And 2 or 3 of them answered back that studying Islam in Europe is not a legitimate research subject. By the end of the 1980s, they had started changing their minds. And of course, with the events that have happened since, with the developments that have happened since, it's quite clear that research on Islam in Europe and the relationship between Islam and Europe has become a major area of research in a number of different disciplines. Obviously in Islamic studies, in legal studies, but also in political science, in law, and very much in social sciences. And one of the things that has become increasingly clear, especially since 1990, is that it's no longer only a matter of immigrant Muslims. As the subject developed during the 80s, it was very much dominated by immigrant Muslims in Western Europe, and if you look at the mass of the literature that comes today, this is still very much a focus. But in the last 15 years, I would suggest that that academia is very gradually and slowly coming to take on board the fact that Islam in Europe is not only immigrants. That there are parts of Europe, and we're sitting in the center of some of those parts of Europe, where Islam is a part of Europe, historically. 500–600 years. Muslims are not strangers, Muslims are part of the settled populations of the nation-states of Eastern Europe. They have also, as we have seen since the end of the Soviet system, especially in the tragedies around Yugoslavia, we have seen that Muslims, as Catholics, as Orthodox, as also as ethnic groups, each in their own way have contributed to and suffered from the tensions of having to find new ways of living together, new ways of organizing states, new ways of organizing religion, since the removal of the pressure cooker lid of the Soviet system. And it was as I was moving into the research post that I have been in Copenhagen now since the autumn of 2007 that this has become a major part of my project. I was approached by the publisher, Brill, and those of you who know Brill will know that they publish very good material in very high quality text with very high quality prices. So I'm very pleased that Ahmed took the initiative to produce a Bosnian translation of it, because this one costs 200 euros, not krona, euros. What I was, and many of us, were increasingly facing during the late 90s and into the new century, especially after the security scares, 9/11 and later, was governments and media and others asking, we've got a problem here in our country of, for example, rules for burial. What do they do elsewhere in Europe? Have they found solutions to this particular problem somewhere else in Europe? And some poor civil servant or researcher is then set to the task of checking with other governments, checking with embassies, what do you do and what do they do, and so on. And it was thought that it would be a good idea to have a reference work where all of these questions were brought together, so that it was all within one set of covers. But it was also a question of challenging observers, politicians, media people, as well as academics, not to accept easy answers. I mean, if we take my own country, Denmark, a question that is often asked is, how many Muslims are there? And your stock answer, as you'll also find here, is about 220, 230,000. But how do we get to that figure? There is no census which asks a question about what religion people are. So the researchers work it out on the basis of nationality, ethnicity. Ethnicity is not an official statistic. Nationality is. But the moment Turks become Danish citizens, they disappear from that statistic. So the figures that we come up with are very, very uncertain. The next question, of course, is what do we mean by Muslim? Are all of these 225,000 Muslims, are they active Muslims? Or are they of that large section of the Muslim community, just as among the Christian community, who don't really care about religion at all? I was in a seminar in Britain about 15 years ago where we were talking about religious statistics in Britain, and a sociologist, whose name I forget, said, you know, we're really asking the wrong question. We should be asking, which place of worship do you currently not attend? That determines whether you are a cultural Christian or a cultural Muslim or a cultural Jew. Very clever question, it's worth thinking about. So we set out here to provide data, but also to question the certainty of the data when that is necessary. There are sections, and Ahmed will fill in the details here, on all kinds of data information. So you can actually ask a question and say, this is how this country does it, this is how that country does it. And we have got to the point where we cover, with a few exceptions, all of the countries of the Council of Europe. We go to the Urals, and we include Southern Caucasus. We don't include the Vatican. The publication is in fact part of a larger package. The reason why Brill asked us to do this was because we had already established a series of books under the title of Muslim Minorities, which is not just Europe-oriented, but books of Muslim minorities elsewhere, North America, Australia, New Zealand, and so on. And having got this far, volume 4 is lying on my desk now, but we have split, for volume 4, we have split the yearbook. These 3 contain the various country reports, but they also contain analytical articles and book reviews. Now those articles and book reviews have been separated out, and from this May, June, will become a new journal of Muslims in Europe, which initially will appear twice a year, and on past experience, as the readership and the material grows, it will end up being a quarterly, i.e. 4 times a year, academic journal. And what they have come up with, Brill, I think, have a subtle plan to keep me in work after I retire next summer. They've come up with an idea that we should now produce a series of annotated legal documents on Islam in Europe. In other words, to collect all the legislation that exists on Islam in Europe in the various countries of the European Union, Norway, Switzerland, and given recent decisions, Croatia will be in there as we plan the series. So that's work, I tell my wife, this is work I've agreed to do so that I have an excuse not to be sent into the garden when I'm retired. I will hand back to Ahmed, who has been involved from the very start and who very kindly hosted the first preparatory meeting of the editors in Sarajevo, and who has been one of my most active colleagues in this whole project. Thank you very much.